The exam season had arrived at the great Interstellar Academy, where students from 100 different worlds came to learn. Among the shining towers and glowing halls walked a single human, nervous and tired. His name was Daniel, a young man from Earth. He was clever but always behind. Alien technology, alien science, alien languages, everything felt too big for him. Daniel had tried hard. He spent nights in the library, struggling with strange formulas that made no sense. His alien classmates laughed softly when he failed to answer questions. Now the final exam was only 1 week away. If he failed again, he would be sent back to Earth in shame. There was only one person who could decide his fate, Professor Chiron. Professor Chiron was not human. He stood taller than any man, with silver skin that glimmered like starlight and eyes that looked as if they carried the weight of centuries. He was respected and feared by all students. Some whispered that he had fought in wars across galaxies before becoming a teacher. No one truly knew his past. Daniel knocked on the professor's office door. His hand trembled. "Enter," a deep voice said from inside. The office was dark, lit only by a strange floating orb of light. Books and data crystals floated in the air, slowly turning as if obeying some unseen force. Professor Chiron sat behind a desk that seemed to grow out of the floor itself. His piercing eyes lifted when Daniel stepped inside. "So, the human comes," Chiron said in a low voice. "Do you seek help with the exam?" Daniel swallowed hard. "Yes, Professor, I have tried, but I cannot keep up. I do not want to fail. Please, is there any way you can help me?" For a long moment, Chiron said nothing. His face was unreadable, his silver features still as stone. Finally, he leaned forward, his voice sharp yet calm. "There is a way," the professor said, "but it is not easy. To pass my exam, you must complete a task, not in the classroom, not in the library, but in the shadows of this academy." Daniel blinked, confused. "A task? What kind of task?" Chiron's gaze deepened, and the floating lights in the room dimmed as if even they feared his words. "You must recover something for me," the professor whispered. "An object hidden long ago within these walls. No student has dared to claim it. Alien minds failed. But perhaps a human. Perhaps you can." Daniel felt a chill crawl down his spine. "Why me? I'm the weakest student. Why not choose someone stronger, someone smarter?" The professor's eyes glowed faintly. "Because strength and knowledge are not always enough. This object responds only to a certain kind of spirit, and I believe you have it." Daniel took a step back, nervous. "What if I refuse?" Chiron's voice became colder. "Then you will fail, and you will leave this academy forever." The silence in the room grew heavy. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. This was not what he expected. He had come here hoping for extra lessons, maybe a chance to study under the professor's guidance. Instead, he was given a mission that sounded dangerous, even deadly. "What is this object?" Daniel asked finally. Chiron stood, towering above him. He raised a hand, and a glowing map appeared in the air, showing the academy's deepest levels, places Daniel had never seen. "It is known as the Orb of Resonance," the professor explained, "a fragment of ancient power. It rests in a hidden chamber far beneath the academy. The path is guarded, the trials are cruel, and the price of failure is high. But bring it to me, and you will pass." Daniel's legs felt weak. "Guarded? Trials? What do you mean?" The professor's face softened slightly, almost like a shadow of pity. "It will test not only your mind, but your heart. Remember this, human. Claes. Ver answers will not save you. Only truth, only courage." Daniel stood frozen, trying to understand. Why would a professor ask such a thing? Was this really about the exam? Or something far greater? Chiron leaned closer, his voice almost a whisper now. "Your future depends on this. The galaxy is watching more closely than you think." Daniel opened his mouth to ask more questions, but the lights in the room suddenly flickered. The map vanished. The professor turned away, signaling that the conversation was over. "Go," Chiron commanded. "You have 7 days. Fail, and you will not return." Daniel stepped out of the office, his heart racing. The cold halls of the academy suddenly felt like a maze of secrets. He wanted to run, to forget, but something deep inside told him there was no escape. He would have to enter the forbidden parts of the academy. He would have to face dangers no one else dared to face. And he could not shake the last words of the professor, echoing in his mind like a warning from fate. "Your future depends on this." Daniel could not sleep that night. The professor's words echoed in his head again and again. Recover the orb of resonance. Your future depends on this. He lay in his small dorm room, staring at the alien ceiling that glowed faintly in the dark. Around him, other students whispered in their own languages, laughing softly, preparing for exams in normal ways. They had books, notes, and tutors. He had only one impossible task. At dawn, Daniel rose. His hands shook as he held the glowing map the professor had given him. It showed paths beneath the academy, areas marked in red. He knew those places were forbidden. Even the bravest alien students avoided them. Why me? Daniel whispered to himself. Why did he choose me? His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. When Daniel opened it, a fellow student stood there, a tall alien girl with pale blue skin and silver eyes. Her name was Lyra, and she was known for her sharp mind. You went to see Professor Chiron last night, she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes searched his face. I know what he asked you. Daniel froze. You know? Lyra nodded. The orb. He asked me once too. I tried. I failed. She looked away, her voice growing softer. Others failed as well. Some never returned. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. Never returned? You mean? Yes, Lyra said firmly. The place is not just forbidden, it is cursed. The orb tests you. It shows you things you cannot bear. That is why Chiron sends humans now. He thinks maybe your kind can survive it. Her words were not comforting. They were heavy with warning. Daniel gripped the map tighter. Why would a professor risk his students like this? Why would he care about an old object? Lyra's eyes darkened. Because it is no ordinary object. The orb of resonance. It belonged to the first builders of the academy. They say it holds knowledge beyond the stars and power enough to shape worlds. Chiron hides it, but he cannot touch it himself. He hopes you can. Daniel shook his head. I don't want power. I just want to pass my exam. Lyra gave him a sad smile. That is why you might succeed. The others wanted power. They wanted glory. That is why the orb rejected them. Before Daniel could ask more, she stepped back into the hallway. Be careful, human. If you go alone. And if you return, you will not be the same. With that, she disappeared into the crowd of students heading to class. Daniel spent the next day in silence, watching his classmates prepare. Alien voices filled the lecture halls. Strange machines floated through the corridors, but all he could think of was the map hidden in his pocket. By evening, he made his choice. He would go. He waited until the academy grew quiet when students returned to their rooms and the halls were dim with night glow. With a deep breath, Daniel slipped through the shadows, following the glowing lines of the map. The path led him to a door deep underground. It was old, made of stone instead of the academy's shining metal. Strange marks glowed faintly on its surface. The map's light faded as if it had reached its end. Daniel touched the door. It opened with a low rumble, revealing a stairway spiraling down into darkness. He hesitated, his heart hammering, but then he remembered Chiron's words. Your future depends on this. Step by step, he descended. The air grew colder. The walls whispered as if voices lived inside the stone. At the bottom of the stairs, he found himself in a wide corridor lit by blue fire that floated without smoke. In the distance, a shadow moved. Daniel froze. Something, or someone, was waiting. He crept forward, pressing against the wall. The shadow grew clearer. It was not a creature of flesh, but a figure of light, tall and faceless, with arms that stretched too long. Its voice rang out, deep and echoing. You are human, the figure said. Another sent by the professor. Daniel swallowed. Do you guard the orb? The figure tilted its head. Guard? No, I test. Many came, all failed. Will you be different? Daniel's throat was dry. I don't want to fail, but I don't want power either. I just want to finish my exam. The figure's light flickered, almost like a laugh. Then perhaps you are ready. But first, you must face the trial, not of strength, not of cleverness, but of truth. The corridor darkened, and the air grew heavy. Around Daniel, the walls melted away into shadows. He was no longer in the academy. He was standing in a vision, one made by the orb itself. A voice whispered inside his mind, Show us who you truly are. Show us why you deserve to stand before the orb. Daniel's heart pounded. He knew this was only the beginning. The trial had started, and there was no turning back. The shadows around Daniel thickened until the corridor was gone. He stood in darkness, heart pounding, trying to understand if he was still inside the academy or trapped in some strange dream. The glowing wing figure had vanished. Only silence remained. Then, faint lights appeared, floating symbols shining on the ground, forming a path forward. Each symbol glowed softly, like steps waiting for him. Daniel hesitated. His hands were cold, his throat dry. He thought of Lyra's warning. The orb shows you things you cannot bear. Was this the trial? Was he already inside the forbidden zone? He stepped onto the first symbol. Instantly, the air shifted. He felt as if unseen eyes were watching him. The second step was heavier, almost like the ground itself was testing his weight. By the third, the darkness trembled, and a whisper curled into his ears. Human, the voice breathed, neither male nor female, but something ancient. Why do you seek the orb? Daniel froze. The voice was inside his mind. He forced himself to answer honestly. I don't seek it for power. I only want to pass my exam. The darkness shook with a sound like laughter. Many said this, many lied. Will you lie too? I'm not lying, Daniel whispered. His voice broke, but he kept walking. The path stretched long and strange, twisting in directions that felt impossible. At times he walked upward, though the ground sloped down. At times he turned left, only to find himself facing the same way as before. The Forbidden Zone was no normal place. It bent reality itself. Finally, the path ended at a vast stone door, carved with glowing runes. A symbol at its center pulsed like a heartbeat. Daniel reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, the door dissolved into dust. Beyond it lay a chamber unlike anything he had seen. The walls curved in strange patterns, as if alive, shifting softly like breathing skin. In the middle stood 3 tall archways, each glowing with a different color, red, blue, and white. Above them, words burned in the air. Choose. Daniel's chest tightened. Was this another test? A voice whispered again. One path leads to truth, one leads to lies, one leads to nothing. Choose wisely, human. Daniel stared at the 3 glowing doors. Red burned like fire, blue shimmered like water, white shone like empty light. He thought carefully. The professor had said, only truth, only courage. Slowly, Daniel stepped toward the white arch. The moment he crossed, the chamber disappeared. He stood in a vast open field beneath a black sky filled with unfamiliar stars. A cold wind blew across the land. Far ahead, he saw a figure waiting. As he walked closer, his steps slowed. His chest ached. The figure was someone he recognized, someone impossible. It was his father. Daniel's breath caught. His father had died years ago on Earth, yet here he stood, alive, eyes full of sorrow. Daniel, the vision said, why are you here? You should not have come. Daniel shook his head. This isn't real. You're not real. His father stepped closer, voice heavy with pain. But does that matter? You left me behind. You left your family. And for what? To chase alien knowledge? To be mocked by those who see you as weak? Is this your dream? Daniel's throat burned. He had no answer. The wind howled. The stars above twisted, turning into dark eyes that watched him. His father's voice grew sharper. Turn back, Daniel. Give up. You are not meant for this. Go home. Daniel dropped to his knees. Every word cut him like a blade. He remembered the days on Earth when he was powerless, when his family doubted his choices. Was this what the orb wanted? To break him with his own fears? Then he remembered Lyra's words. The orb rejects those who want power. He realized something. This was not about knowledge or strength. It was about facing what he feared most. Failure, doubt, shame. He rose slowly, tears burning his eyes. You're not my father. You're only my fear wearing his face. I loved him, yes, but I cannot turn back. I will not give up. The figure's form flickered. The voice softened. Then prove it, Daniel. Walk forward. The field cracked apart. The stars exploded into light. Suddenly, Daniel was back in the chamber, but the other archways had vanished. Only a straight path remained, leading deeper into the Forbidden Zone. Daniel's legs trembled as he stepped forward. The path grew darker, colder, yet his heart felt lighter. For the first time, he felt a spark of courage. At the end of the path, a massive door stood, carved with strange spirals of silver. Unlike the first door, this one did not glow. It waited, silent and heavy, like a final challenge. Daniel reached out, his hand shaking. As he touched the cold surface, the door opened with a deep groan. Beyond it, the chamber stretched vast and endless. In the center floated something bright, wrapped in streams of energy. The orb. But as Daniel stepped inside, the ground cracked under his feet, and from the shadows rose new figures, tall, faceless guardians, their eyes burning like fire. The trial was not over. It had only just begun. The chamber was wide and endless, its walls hidden in shadow. In the center floated the orb of resonance, glowing like a small star, wrapped in streams of shifting energy. It pulsed with a rhythm, almost like a living heart. But Daniel's eyes were not on the orb. His breath caught as three tall guardians stepped out from the darkness. They were faceless, their bodies made of stone and flame, and their eyes glowed red like burning coal. Each carried a staff that hummed with power. One of them spoke, its voice echoing from every direction. "Human, you stand where no student dares. The orb lies before you, but it will not come without trial. To hold it, you must face 3 challenges. Fail, and you will remain here forever." Daniel's knees felt weak. His instincts screamed to run, but his feet would not move. The orb hovered so close, yet death felt closer. Still, he remembered Professor Chiron. His words, "Only truth, only courage." He clenched his fists. "I will face your trials." The guardians raised their staves. The chamber shook, and the first trial began. The trial of fear. The ground vanished beneath Daniel's feet. He fell, screaming, until he landed on cold stone. Darkness surrounded him, but soon shapes appeared. Dozens of alien students standing in a circle. They pointed at him, laughing. "You don't belong here," one shouted. "Earth is weak," another cried. "You will always fail." Their voices grew louder, crushing his spirit. Daniel dropped to his knees, covering his ears. Their words were his greatest fear made real. Being nothing, being worthless, being the outsider who would never succeed. But then, through the noise, he heard a softer voice, his own, from deep inside. Truth, not lies. Daniel stood slowly. His legs shook, but his voice grew firm. "I am human. I am different, yes. But difference does not mean weakness. I will not listen to your lies." The mocking voices cracked like broken glass. The students faded into mist, leaving the chamber quiet once more. The first guardian's voice thundered. "You have faced fear, now face doubt." The trial of doubt. The darkness shifted again. Daniel now stood in a classroom filled with bright lights. At the front was Professor Chiron himself, staring with cold eyes. "You disappoint me," the professor said. "You will never pass. You are wasting everyone's time." Daniel's chest tightened. To hear those words from the professor was worse than the laughter of the other students. He wanted to collapse. But then he remembered Lyra's warning. "The orb tests you. It shows you things you cannot bear." Daniel took a deep breath. "You are not my professor. You are only my doubt." His voice shook, but he kept speaking. "Maybe I will fail. Maybe I am not the best. But I will not quit. I will keep trying." The professor's image cracked, splitting apart like glass under pressure. The classroom dissolved into smoke. The second guardian spoke. "You have faced doubt. Now fact, truth." The trial of truth. Daniel now found himself standing before a mirror, but the reflection staring back at him was not himself. It was stronger, taller, confident, wearing robes of success. The reflection smiled. "This is who you could be. Take the orb, and you will have everything. Knowledge, power, respect. All the aliens will bow to you. Isn't this what you want?" Daniel's hands trembled. For a moment, he wanted to believe it. He wanted the respect, the recognition. He wanted to feel like he belonged. But deep inside, he remembered why he came to the academy in the first place. It was not for glory. It was for knowledge, for learning, for proving to himself that humanity could stand among the stars. He clenched his fists. "No, that is not the truth. I don't want to rule. I don't want to be worshipped. I just want to learn. I just want a chance." The reflection's smile twisted, then shattered. The mirror exploded into shards of light that dissolved into nothing. The chamber returned. The 3 guardians stood before him, silent now. Finally, one spoke. "You have faced fear. You have faced doubt. You have spoken truth. You have courage, human." The guardians bowed their heads and stepped back into the shadows. The path to the orb was open. The orb awakens. Daniel's heart pounded as he walked toward the floating orb. Its light grew stronger, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Energy wrapped around him, warm and alive, almost welcoming. He reached out slowly, his hand trembling. The orb did not resist. Instead, it glowed brighter, as if it had been waiting for him. The moment his fingers touched its surface, visions flooded his mind. He saw galaxies burning in war, alien civilizations rising and falling, secrets buried in stars older than time. He saw Professor Chiron, younger, standing in battle with fire in his eyes. Daniel gasped and nearly pulled back, but the orb's voice filled his mind. You are chosen, not for power, for truth. The energy wrapped tighter, but it did not burn. It felt heavy yet alive, like holding the heart of the universe in his hand. When Daniel opened his eyes, the guardians were gone. The orb floated calmly in his grasp, glowing softly, but the chamber around him shook, cracks splitting the walls, as if the academy itself knew something had changed. Daniel clutched the orb to his chest. He had passed the trials, but deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Daniel stood in the middle of the trembling chamber, clutching the orb of resonance to his chest. Its light no longer blinded him. It glowed gently now, as if it had accepted him. Yet the walls cracked and the ground shook, as though the academy itself disapproved. His heart raced. He had passed the trials, but he did not feel safe. The orb pulsed in his hands like a living thing. Each beat echoed in his chest, filling him with strange energy. Then, without warning, the light of the orb burst brighter, and Daniel's mind was pulled away. Visions of the past. He was no longer in the chamber. He stood on a battlefield under a blackened sky. Alien armies clashed, fire streaking through the air, ships burning as they fell from the heavens. The ground shook with the march of war machines. At the center of it all stood a figure Daniel recognized immediately, Professor Chiron. But this was not the calm professor of the academy. This Chiron was younger, armored in silver and gold, his eyes blazing with fire. He wielded the orb of resonance itself, sending waves of energy that shattered enemy lines. Aliens fled before him, their screams echoing across the broken land. Daniel's breath caught. His professor was not just a teacher. He had once been a warrior, feared and unstoppable. The vision shifted. Chiron stood alone after the battle, staring at the orb with sorrow in his eyes. His army was victorious, but the ground was littered with the dead, both friend and foe. The orb glowed in his hands, but instead of pride, his face carried only grief. The scene faded, leaving Daniel trembling. Whispers of the orb's voice echoed inside him, soft yet heavy. This is the truth of your professor. He seeks to bury his past, but he cannot. The orb carries memory. The orb carries burden. Daniel swallowed hard. Why show me this? I didn't ask for his past. Because to hold me is to carry truth, the orb whispered. Chiron gave you this task not for your exam, but because he cannot touch me again. His spirit is too heavy, too stained by war. Only one with a clean heart could take me. Daniel shook his head. But I'm not strong. I'm not even the best student. I'm just me. The orb's glow pulsed gently. That is why you were chosen. Return to the chamber. The vision ended. Daniel stumbled back into the chamber, clutching the orb tighter. The guardians were gone, but the cracks in the walls widened. Dust fell from above, and the ground trembled more violently. He had to leave. The door he entered now stood open, glowing faintly. With the orb in his arms, Daniel ran, his footsteps echoing in the collapsing hall. Blue fire flickered out one by one, and the whispers in the walls grew louder, almost angry. You should not be here. You are not worthy. You will be broken. Daniel forced himself forward, ignoring the voices. His legs ached, but fear pushed him faster. Finally, he climbed the last stair and burst into the quiet corridor of the academy. The forbidden zone sealed behind him with a heavy slam. For a long moment, he leaned against the wall, gasping for air. The orb's glow lit the corridor softly, as if proud of him, but his relief faded quickly. He knew he could not keep the secret. The orb had shown him the truth. Professor Chiron was not just a teacher. He was a warrior who once used this very power. Meeting the professor, Daniel returned to Chiron, his office. The professor was waiting, as if he already knew. You survived, Chiron said quietly, his silver eyes focused on the orb glowing in Daniel's arms. For the first time, his voice carried something Daniel had never heard before, uncertainty. Daniel placed the orb on the desk. I found it, but it showed me things. It showed me you. Chiron's expression darkened. He stood in silence for a long time before finally speaking. The orb reveals what it chooses, and now it has chosen you. Daniel's stomach twisted. Why me? Why did you send me, a human, into that place? Chiron's gaze was heavy. Because humans are not yet burdened by the weight of galactic wars. You are young in the eyes of the universe, untouched by the greed and ambition that destroy others. The orb will not burn you as it burned me." Daniel hesitated, then asked, "And the exam? Was this really about passing?" For the first time, Charon's lips curled into a small, sad smile. The exam was never about books or numbers. It was about this, about whether you had the courage to face the truth. You have passed in ways others cannot. The hidden burden. Daniel should have felt proud, but instead he felt heavier. He looked at the orb, glowing softly, innocent yet powerful. "What happens now?" he asked. Chiron stepped closer, his voice low. "Now you carry it. Not in your hands, but in your spirit. The orb will whisper to you. It will test you again and again. Passing the trial does not end the journey. It begins it." Daniel's heart sank. He had thought this was the end, the key to finally proving himself. Instead, it was only the start of something far bigger. Chiron placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. His touch was cold, yet steady. "Do not be afraid. The orb chose you because you spoke truth. That is rare in this galaxy. But remember, truth has a price. One day, you will be forced to pay it." Daniel swallowed hard. He glanced once more at the orb. Its light flickered, as if it understood the professor's warning. Outside, the academy's halls echoed with the laughter and the chatter of students preparing for exams. They had no idea what Daniel now carried. And for the first time, Daniel realized something terrifying. His struggle was no longer about passing a class. It was about surviving the future the orb had tied to him. The orb sat quietly on Professor Charon's desk, glowing like a captured star. Daniel could not take his eyes off it. Its gentle light seemed harmless now, yet he knew what it carried: memories, power, truth. It had shown him visions he could never forget. The professor stood beside the desk, his tall silver figure casting long shadows across the room. His usually calm face looked heavy, burdened by secrets he had hidden for years. Daniel finally broke the silence. "The orb showed me you on the battlefield. It showed me how you used it. You were not a teacher then, you were a warrior." Charon's eyes narrowed, but he did not deny it. "Yes, long before this academy, I fought in the wars of resonance. The orb was my weapon. It obeyed me when I was young and full of pride. With it, I crushed armies. With it, I ended battles in fire." His voice grew softer, almost like a confession. "But every victory cost too much. Entire cities burned, millions died, and I realized too late. The orb was never meant for destruction. It was meant for balance, for knowledge, but I had already stained it with blood. That is why it rejects me now." Daniel shivered. "And that's why you sent me? Because you couldn't touch it again?" Chiron shook his head slowly. "Not only that, I needed to know if humanity was ready. The galaxy sees your kind as weak, fragile, but I see something else. You carry honesty where others carry ambition. You carry hope where others carry greed. That is why the orb chose you." Daniel's chest tightened. "But I didn't want this. I only wanted to pass your exam." Chiron's gaze softened, almost pitying. "The exam it's never about papers or numbers. It was always about this. You wanted to prove yourself? You have. The orb has judged you worthy." A heavy burden. Daniel sat down, his hands shaking. The weight of Charon's words pressed down on him like a mountain. He had wanted nothing more than to survive school, to not be laughed at by alien classmates. Now he was being told he carried something greater than anyone could imagine. The professor walked to the window, staring out at the shining towers of the academy. The orb has slept for centuries. Many tried to claim it, all failed. Do you know why? Daniel shook his head. "Because they wanted what it could give," Charon said. "Power, knowledge, immortality. The orb does not serve the selfish, it rejects them. But you asked for nothing. That is why it accepted you." Daniel looked at the orb, its light reflecting in his tired eyes. "But what happens now? What do I do with it?" Chiron turned back to him, his expression grim. "Now you prepare. The orb's awakening will not go unnoticed. There are others, beings far older and far darker than you can imagine, who will feel its call. They will come, and they will not stop until it is theirs." The warning. Daniel's stomach turned cold. "You mean, because I touched it? I've started something?" Chiron nodded slowly. "The moment your hands closed around the orb, the silence ended. Across the galaxy, there are ears that listen for such changes. They have heard it. They will come." Daniel wanted to shout, to push the orb away, to give it back. But deep inside, he knew it was too late. Once chosen, he could not run from it. Then why give it to me at all? Daniel asked, anger creeping into his voice. If it's so dangerous, why not keep it hidden forever? Chiron's eyes glowed faintly, filled with a strange sorrow. Because hiding only delays the storm. The orb cannot be buried. It waits, it chooses, and it prepares. One day someone would awaken it. Better it be you, a human with truth in his heart, than a nothing who would use it for war. A teacher's confession. The professor stepped closer, lowering his voice. Do you want to know the hardest truth, Daniel? Daniel hesitated. Yes. Chiron leaned in, his words slow and heavy. I never intended to be a teacher. This academy is not my destiny. It is my prison. I came here to guard the orb, to make sure no one touched it. But I grew tired of watching, tired of waiting. I needed someone who could carry what I could not. And when you came, when I saw the way you struggled yet did not quit, I knew. Daniel's heart pounded. The professor, the feared and respected Chiron, was admitting weakness, admitting regret. I gave you this trial not just to test you, Chiron continued. I gave it because I needed release. I needed someone new to carry the burden I could no longer bear. Daniel stared at the orb. It glowed faintly, as if listening. He felt a chill creep through him. He had not only passed a test, he had inherited a responsibility that once belonged to a galactic warrior. The professor's final words. Chiron placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder, his silver skin cold to the touch. Do not hate me for what I have done. One day you will understand. The orb will show you more. It will whisper to you in ways I cannot. And when the time comes, you must decide whether to use it or to let it sleep again. Daniel's throat felt tight. And if I fail? Chiron's eyes darkened. Then the galaxy will fall into hands that should never hold it. For a long moment, silence filled the office. The glow of the orb painted both their faces in pale light. Daniel felt smaller than ever, yet somehow more important than he had ever been. Outside, the academy carried on with normal life, students laughing, studying, dreaming of exams. But Daniel now knew their world was only a thin shell hiding a storm, and at the heart of that storm was him, T. The orb of resonance rested in Daniel's hands, glowing softly, almost breathing with him. The academy was quiet outside, but inside his heart storms raged. His life had changed in ways he could not yet understand. He had come to pass an exam. Now he held something that could shake the galaxy. Professor Chiron stood in silence, his tall silver figure heavy with regret. He had said what he needed to say. Now the choice was Daniel's. Daniel finally whispered, "What do I do now?" Chiron's eyes glimmered faintly. "You listen. The orb has chosen you, and it will guide you. But remember, Daniel, it is not a gift. It is a responsibility." The orb's call. That night, Daniel returned to his small dorm room. He hid the orb beneath a cloth, but its light still leaked out, painting the walls with shifting shadows. He tried to sleep, but each time he closed his eyes, he heard the orb's voice. "Daniel, Daniel." He sat up, his heart racing. "What do you want from me?" The orb pulsed softly. "We want nothing. We only show. Look." Suddenly, his vision blurred. The room dissolved and Daniel found himself floating in space. Stars stretched in every direction, brighter and sharper than he had ever seen. But far away, shadows moved between them, vast fleets of ships, their engines glowing red like hungry eyes. He saw alien leaders gathered around dark thrones, their voices whispering in languages he could not understand. Yet their meaning was clear. They had felt the orb's awakening. They were coming. Daniel gasped as the vision faded. Sweat dripped down his forehead. "They know," he whispered. "They're coming for it." The orb glowed brighter, almost like an answer. A new resolve. The next morning, Daniel walked through the academy halls. The map of hidden visions burned into his mind. The other students looked at him and saw only a tired human, struggling as always. They had no idea he carried a storm in his pocket. Lyra, the blue-skinned alien girl who had once warned him, stopped him in the corridor. She studied his face carefully. You can me back, and you're different." Daniel hesitated. He wanted to tell her everything, but the words stuck. How could he explain the truth when it was too big even for him? Finally, he said only, "The professor was right. The orb is real." Her silver eyes widened, but before she could ask more, Daniel turned away. He was not ready to share the burden yet, not even with her. Chiron's final lesson. That evening, Chiron summoned Daniel once more. The professor's office felt colder than before, the floating lights dimmer, as if the orb's presence weighed even on the room itself. "You have seen the visions," Chiron said quietly. Daniel nodded. "Fleets, leaders, they're coming." Chiron's jaw tightened. "Yes, the orb's awakening cannot be hidden. You must be ready." Daniel shook his head. "I'm just a student. I'm no warrior. I don't even belong here." But Chiron stepped closer, his eyes sharp. "That is why you were chosen. A warrior would use the orb for battle. A ruler would use it for control. But you, Daniel, you only wanted to learn. You carry no greed. That is your strength." Daniel stared at him. For the first time, he realized Chiron truly believed in him. That belief felt heavier than the orb itself. The weight of destiny. Night fell again. Daniel stood alone on one of the academy's high balconies, the orb in his hands. Stars glittered across the black sky, each one a world filled with life. He wondered how many of those worlds would soon march against him. The orb pulsed warmly, like a heartbeat. A voice whispered again, "You are not alone. We have waited for one like you, but the test has only begun." Daniel's breath caught. "Test? There's more?" "Always more," the orb replied. "The galaxy is not saved in one night. It is shaped in choices. Yours will matter, more than you know." He gripped it tightly, his mind torn between fear and resolve. The beginning of something greater. Suddenly, the orb's light flared, casting the entire balcony in white glow. Daniel shielded his eyes. When the light faded, a symbol burned faintly in bow sur bow. The night sky above him, visible only to him, a circle surrounded by 3 stars. He didn't know what it meant, but deep inside he felt it was a sign, the first sign of what was coming. From behind he heard Chiron's voice. "The orb has marked you. The galaxy will know. Some will seek to destroy you. Others will seek to follow you. And you must decide which you will allow." Daniel turned, his voice unsteady. "So do I pass your exam now?" For the first time, Chiron laughed softly. It was a tired laugh, filled with both sadness and pride. "Daniel, your exam has only just begun. The bigger future." Daniel looked once more at the stars. He had started this journey desperate not to fail, desperate to prove himself to teachers and classmates. Now he held a burden far greater than any grade or diploma. The orb pulsed in his hands, warm and alive. He could feel it watching him, guiding him, waiting for the choices he would make. Somewhere in the galaxy, fleets were preparing. Dark leaders whispered his name, and here, in the quiet academy, a human student stood on the edge of a destiny larger than he had ever dreamed. The future was coming, and the future was watching.